Your Excellencies, heads of states and government, President of the Parliament of Algeria, the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Egypt, leaders from the private sector, leaders from development finance institutions that are with us today, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, honorable ministers, excellencies that are representing their heads of states, Your Excellencies, ambassadors and high commissioners, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be with you again this morning. I want to start, if I may, by appreciating His Excellency President Akufo-Addo for hosting us here at the presidential retreat. As I was listening to the analysis of Africa's challenges and the tools that are available for us to overcome those challenges, it was apparent to me that as a continent, of course, much has to be done. But since May 1963, in that historic city of Addis Ababa, where our founding mothers and fathers established the Organization of African Unity, 61 years later, I believe we can declare that from a political perspective, we have achieved the results that they set out, except one: economic integration of our continent. And so we have a very unique opportunity in the African Continental Free Trade Area to conclude the work that our founding mothers and fathers set out. It has been mentioned yesterday and the day before, the challenge of currency fragmentation, over-reliance on the export of unprocessed goods to mainly countries of the North, sustaining the colonial economic model over the last 60 years. Of course, fragmentation of Africa's markets along borders, investment markets, investment rules that are fragmented, all of these factors combined constraining Africa's growth and development. And so in Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, embedded in it, one of the flagship projects is the African Continental Free Trade Area. We have taken some steps over the last 3 to 4 years to accelerate implementation of the AfCFTA. Professor Orama, I am sure, will mention that last year, the year before here, in Accra, Ghana, we established and launched the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, which should enable and does enable trading in local currency, reducing the cost of trade to small medium enterprises, to young entrepreneurs across the African continent. And when you consider the fact that in 2019 alone, as Africans, we traded $19.5 billion on SWIFT. Certainly, the absence of a platform that enhances cost-effective trade is a significant barrier to Africa's prosperity. And so, with the implementation of the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, which we are very proud to be a partner of, which was endorsed by the Assembly of Heads of States and Government, we believe that one of the critical objectives of the Organization of African Unity is on track to be met. Our continent has over 60% of the world's arable land, remaining arable land. Over 35% minerals of the world are in our continent. It is, of course, true that over the last 60 years, we have had a deficit in industrial capacity and a deficit in the capacity to process these raw minerals. But we have an opportunity, and I will mention just one, and that is lithium. Of the top 5 lithium producing countries in the world, 3 are on the African continent, positioning us as Africans to be well poised to influence the direction of global industrial development of the automotive sector. As the automotive sector globally transitions from combustion engines to electric-powered vehicles, that places the African continent at the center of global industrialization. And so our development finance institutions, I know some of them are here, are working very hard to deploy capital to ensure that the capacity to process these minerals here on the African continent, that capacity sees fruition. In the area of digitization, soon, next month, in Addis Ababa, our heads of states will adopt the protocol on women and youth in trade, as well as the protocol on digital trade. But this innovation and competitiveness in digital-based financial services happened in the absence of a regulatory framework that enhances and encourages that innovation in financial services powered by digitization to happen. The beneficiaries, the most immediate beneficiaries of these two protocols that I've mentioned must be small medium enterprises that are led by women, and must be young entrepreneurs, particularly in the area of digitization of Africa's economy. Of course, there are significant challenges that remain. As much as we've made progress, challenges remain. The cost of trade finance continues to be prohibitive. The visa requirements, I was very pleased, as I'm sure you were too, when His Excellency President Akufo-Addo announced that soon Ghana will join Rwanda, Kenya in enabling visa-free travel into their countries. The other challenge, of course, is the cost of infrastructure, which is estimated to be at over $150 billion annually. But it's also an opportunity for us to mobilize our private sector resources, pension funds, private equity funds, to deploy this capital in trade supporting infrastructure. And we have begun to see that. Over the last 5 years, African Development Bank has invested over $45 billion in trade supporting infrastructure. I have the honor and the privilege to travel around the continent, and I see these infrastructure developments and the impact that they make on small medium enterprises in particular. Let me end on this note. The World Bank projects and estimates that by the year 2035, where we implement the AfCFTA, as we should, aggressively, we position our continent to see benefits of over $450 billion to our combined GDP, consumer spending and business spending, increasing intra-Africa trade by over 50%, lifting 100 million Africans out of poverty, extreme poverty and abject poverty, and contributing to a reduction in the gender salary gap. And so it is absolutely critical that in this dialogue, as we seek to find solutions to these challenges, and we deploy the African Continental Free Trade Area as a tool that was foreseen in May 1963 in Addis Ababa, that at the fore of the benefits must be young entrepreneurs, must be small, medium enterprises that are led by women who contribute over 60% to Africa's GDP, employing over 465 million Africans. These must be the immediate beneficiaries of a continental free trade area as they power and drive the integration of our continent. 27 years from now, the largest working force in the world will be African. The youngest population in the world will be African. At that time, our continent is projected to have a combined GDP of 16.5 trillion United States dollars, meaning that we potentially can be the 6th or the 7th largest economy in the world at that time. As I said, I am extremely hopeful. The political will is there, the political commitment of our heads of state. We are accelerating our dialogue and interaction with the private sector as a critical pillar of the AfCFTA. Very, very important that the private sector contributes not only investment, but also contributes intellectual leadership to this continental project. So I want to once again appreciate the partnership, Prosperity Network, and the Presidency of the Republic of Ghana for convening us here for the second edition of this important dialogue. The heads of states of the African Union last year received the compact document from President Akufo-Addo. It has now become, our discussions here and the outcomes here become part of the agenda of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government. So your contribution is very, very important and does indeed reach the decision makers on our continent. And so I end on this note, and I wish all of us very good deliberations for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.